Alright guys, hey, I couldn't figure out for the life of me why all my shots... Fritz, what are you doing, buddy? Anyway, I couldn't figure out for the life of me why all my shots were coming out really dark, and it was two things actually. It was my auto ISO setting would only go up to like 3200 or something like that, and I didn't know that by default, so I had to go in and reset it and allow it to do whatever. I told it to go as high as the camera can go, which is like 16,000 or something crazy. And then a second problem that I noticed was that the camera had a exposure compensation setting at -2/3 for some reason. So like a lot of my shots were just coming out dark if I was depending on auto ISO, which was really bugging me because a lot of times I like and I use auto ISO in video because it does a great job and I don't have to worry about my exposure as much. So anyway, let's go wake up Quincy and see how she's doing. It's dark. Oh, there we go. Let's go. Hey, did you take a good nap? Yeah. Do you want to watch Trolls or something? What do you want to do, baby? She gets pretty used to the camera kind of interface all the time now. Ooh. So one thing I'm trying to do is also depend on the autofocus for video, especially like this where I'm just walking around and I'm talking to the camera. Just let the camera do its own thing. I did go in to the plethora of autofocus options, something like 16 different features that I needed to go in and tweak and adjust. So I made some adjustments on those just to try to fine-tune how the autofocus reacts, what it looks for, and how quickly it tracks different things moving through the frame, or I don't know. So we'll just see if that does a good job. I know Canon does a pretty good job at autofocus when you know, it's tracking a face pretty close to the camera or it's not moving that much. So I anticipate it's doing a really good job. This is kind of a loud lens. It's a Tokina 11-20 f2.8. But I love this lens. I've said it before, it's a tank. You know, it's a really solid piece of glass. Canon, don't let me down. Don't let me down, Canon. What's wrong? It's so hard when you're doing it the right way. Okay, give me 5. Give me 5 at least. Thank you. Up high again. Down low. We need to change your diaper maybe. Is that why you're sad? Let's change your diaper, okay? I wanted to try out the, I've got the zoom just hooked up to it. I'm not really sure of the settings. It looked like I was adjusting some settings for the volume in there, but I couldn't really tell. It looked like it was just headphone volume. So I adjusted some stuff on the zoom, the H5, but I don't know if it's gonna fix anything. Also, I thought this would be a cool test because I've got like a really loud movie going on in the background. So the camera's, you know, 1.5 feet away from me. So just wanted to see what that would sound like later. So there you go.
He can't be gone.
I'm sorry, Bobby. Sorry, but I can't have you leaving before tomorrow's dinner.
She's so adorable.
So don't be
Hey, maybe don't pull on that cable. Kind of important. Stop, don't touch the lens, stop it! Don't mess with the microphone. No! Don't eat that. Quincy? 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 That's good. Oh! Jeez. Oh. Please be nice with that cable. Please don't touch that anymore.
Don't say that you live when you walk away. You're talking the truth. Okay, this is the moment when everybody's in the line. So what you working with? Just that high, you know the bass is on the low. Take that feeling, make it something that you start.
All right, here we go. We're gonna test this out a little bit more. Went ahead and threw a little CP filter on this sucker. Just want to go on a walk and talk a little bit about how I feel about using this camera so far. Hey, come on, let's go. She's so cute. Check this out. Let's go. So let's see how this thing does. I'm trying to spot meter, but it doesn't seem to feel as just right on as what I want from an exposure standpoint. But it's close. It's just a little. I don't know if it's just a little slow. It's a little slow. So I probably just adjust some settings there. It also feels like it's a little darker than I want it to think. But I don't know. That's probably just because I've got the metering wrong. Or I just don't understand the metering, which is actually true. I don't understand the metering as much. I feel like the metering on the Nikon is just way easier to understand, but that's probably unfair. I don't know. These are just my opinions. Let's talk about this camera. So this is the Canon 80D. What I normally use, maybe I should back up a little bit and give some history. So I started out with a Nikon D80, went to D7000, and had dabbled with some other Nikon full frame cameras, just helping people out, friends, and so I kind of grew up in the Nikon world a little bit. Let's go. Come on. Let's shoot into the sun and see how bad this metering is. So, see, it does a really good job, I think, of tracking my face in this zone. And I haven't really done much with the video autofocus settings. I messed around a little bit with the tracking sensitivity, you know, like the refocusing timing and stuff like that. There's one thing I will say about Nikon video that, oh my gosh, it just drives me nuts. You know, when you want to do something like this, where you just want to talk to the camera a little bit, but, you know, you could be sitting down in a chair, you could be walking like I'm doing right now. It just doesn't seem to matter. Like, the autofocus system in Nikon even if you're using the full-time autofocus motor, right? You know, where you're telling it, hey, track this face or this subject or this item. Even when you tell Nikon to do that, it just sucks at doing it. It worries too much. Most of the time, it's worrying too much. Like if I'm just walking around like this, or if I'm sitting in a chair, obviously my focus isn't, I don't want my focus to change that drastically, even if I'm leaning back and forth. Like, you know what? Most subjects, most of the time, are gonna come back to that same area, that same focal plane, that same focal range. So just leave it alone. It would be nice if I could just leave it in autofocus, just in case I move a little bit more than I want to. Hey, stay away from that. We're close to a danger zone right here. I don't like it. Come on, you're doing good. She didn't really get a good nap. And so she's probably gonna go to bed really early. Anyway, so Nikon just sucks at the autofocus video, right? The full-time autofocus, you know, or what Canon calls, well, and actually I don't know what Canon calls it, servo autofocus or AI servo or something like that. You know, Nikon just drops the ball on this all the time. There's no denying it. And Canon just seems to have it right. So, you know, this has been one of my biggest issues with Nikon video, is the autofocus. So that's why I shoot in manual focus. Like almost 100% of the time I shoot in manual focus for video. That's one of the things I really do like about this camera so far. It seems like it's pretty good at just not freaking out and worrying about, oh, you know what, your subject is out of focus. No, I don't want you to go that way. We're gonna go this way, okay? Okay, go. So it does a really good job of balancing that refocus necessity. You can hold my hand if you're scared. Come here. But here's, and I don't want to kill Canon in this review, so don't take this the wrong way, guys. But Canon is super difficult to understand the menus and adjust all the settings, and part of it is because well, this is all my opinion, but part of it I think is because there's like way too many options for me to adjust. Let's go back, baby. This is not our house. But Daddy, I want this house. Well, James doesn't pay me enough, okay? But now that I'm using Canon, you know, maybe, I don't know. You know, there's just too many options to think about, to worry about, I don't know. And to play the other side of that coin. One of the things that I think may be the true story here is that it's just difficult the first few times you go through to set it up, right? You know, like after that, probably it just, you know, you just turn it on and use the settings that you've got going on. It's just getting through that default awkwardness of like, man, I've got 16 autofocus features that I need to go through and that I need to adjust because the camera is not thinking the way that I want it to out of the box. Now that's just me, and maybe it thinks the way you want it to out of the box, and that's great. It's fantastic. I love it when cameras do that, right? But this one and none of the Canons do for me. So I've got to go in and tweak them. And you know what? I've got a little bit of a tech, you know, mindset. I don't mind digging around and figuring it out to a certain point. You know, I can only take so much of a dilemma or a problem for so long. And in this case, I'll sit here with the Canon and I'll go through the settings. I won't get done because there's that many of them. And because I've set something and I'll want to test it out and tweak it a little bit and go back in and yada yada. I don't know if you could see that, but she's picking flowers and that's pretty adorable. She's so perfect. Come on, let's go. Let's move on. So, you know, it's taken me a few days to feel confident enough to even do this video, for one thing. talk about these settings, talk about how I feel about them and stuff like that. That aside, there's only the standard things to complain about, right? Like, oh, I don't know where the button is. And that's only gonna last for me for not even very long at all. I'm gonna get used to where the buttons are, and I'll also go through the custom settings and custom button functions, and I'm gonna set up what I can to make it feel like I want it to feel. So overall, yeah, there's a lot that Canon could do to be better. Out of the box, it is a nightmare for me. But all the settings are there. All the features are there. All of the muscle is there. The things that aren't there, the few things that aren't there, we're talking about dynamic range. Okay, Nikon just blows Canon out of the water with dynamic range. That's not an opinion. I'm just kidding. Of course, all of this is opinion. What is that? Oh, no, I thought it was like a snake skin, but it wasn't. What are you doing? You don't smoke. Here, hold on to me. I mean, the rest of it's there. You just kind of have to dig for it. You know, and once you dig for it, if you're willing to dig for it long enough, you're gonna find it. And it's not terrible enough to complain like crazy about the brand. And that's why I don't. I grew up in Nikon, that's why I own Nikon. It's probably why I'll always own Nikon, no matter how slow the brands are. We all know that Nikon, maybe Nikon especially, is like crazy slow. In the mirrorless game, should we say the innovation game in general? I mean, you know, but the thing is like, Canon's right there with it. It's just as bad, and that's again why I feel like it's all just it's opinion, it's patience, it's the love of the game. Yeah, if I got really nitpicky, like I said, I could tell you that I'm not appreciative of the lower dynamic range from Canon in general, full frame and crop. I don't like how in the custom button functions menu, Canon tells me what I can and can't do with a certain button. Like, hey, Phil, do you want to change this button to something else? Yeah, Canon, I really do. Okay, well, these are your 3 to 5 options that you can choose from. And this, you know, so Canon, the customizer king, right? That's not exactly what I would expect. We're home. Let's go back in. So, okay, there's plenty to complain about, but it's nothing different than what Canon people are probably going to complain about if somebody stuck them with a Nikon.
A master criminal from stealing 2 dozen moldy onions.
Hate to disagree with you, sir, but those aren't onions. Those are a crocus varietal called Midnicampum halcythius. They're a Class C botanical, sir. Well, I grew up in a family where plant husbandry...
It's a really good movie. Well, it's a good movie. I've got to do the dishes now, so I can't really talk much longer. Honestly, I'm kind of getting tired of my voice. I don't even know if you can hear any of this, because this is kind of the first real time I've walked around with this setup. So for you guys that are interested, Canon 80D, Zoom H5. I'm in manual, but I'm using like auto ISO. Inside, I'm shooting 60 frames per second, and my shutter is like 1/125th, 2.8. I've got a Tokina 11 to 20 on here, I think. Let me take this CP off. It's not a bad camera. It's not. And I think that as much as I could probably nitpick and complain about certain tiny little things, I'm not going to. I'm just going to try to enjoy the technology. I like, for example, that this camera has a touchscreen. I like that it rotates. I like that the screen rotates, because then I can see myself and make videos like this a lot easier than I could with like my Nikon D750, which has a great little articulating screen. And it's amazing for video, but not like filming yourself, right? But here's the thing about this. As great as it is to have this screen over here to set up my shot and walk around with it like this, almost immediately I have this feeling like I probably shouldn't look at that screen, right? Because that's going to look weird if I'm always looking over here, which I think 90% of the time I'm looking over here. So maybe that's not a really cool feature to have after all. I don't know. I like screens that move around and help the filmmaker make their little videos. I don't like it when you I know, but I don't like it when you crawl up there. She's got to go to bed. It's getting really close to her bedtime now. Normally 8 o'clock. How could you put a baby to bed that late? First of all, she's not a baby. She's a tiny adult. And secondly, it's 7:20, okay? I told you I was going to put her to bed early. And you know what? She sleeps through the night, so... Come here, baby. I don't like when you crawl up on the tables and stuff, okay? We haven't put you through that gym safety class yet. So, what am I saying, guys? I should figure out a way to wrap this up. So this is a Canon review video. I am a Nikon guy. I still love Nikon. I always will. There are a lot of things that I do appreciate about Canon. One of the main ones is the full-time autofocus system. Other things that I really like though about this camera is the screen that rotates out, so that helps me set up my shot for videos that I might make more often like this. Fairly easy to use, like once you dig through all the settings, go through that headache of like 800 different functions that you have to figure out. Yeah, baby, I'm right here. What are you yelling for? One of the things that I like, again, this is nitpicky, I'm shooting in the picture profile called Faithful, and I like the colors. It's probably going to be fairly easy to mess around with any color grading, which I don't do very much of that at all. Anyway, just once you dig through all the stuff for a few days and you fine tune it the way that you want, you test out... Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of features to go through, dig through, learn about, try to figure out, test, reset. But you know what? It's a prosumer camera, you know, and a lot of the features, you know, once you have them dialed in, they're totally important and you like having them work properly. So I don't know, it's worth the time, you know, it's worth the time. You know, when it comes to that, I think all I'm saying is that I wish the menu was easier to understand just naturally, and that there were a little bit less features to have to go through and set up, just out of the box. You know, I wish that it had that time-lapse movie mode that Nikon has started incorporating into their cameras. I like being able to time-lapse something and just have it output a video file for me. You know, if I don't want to really do anything super high def. Just the navigation of the menu, man. Gosh, it could have been so much easier, I feel like. There's too many options to navigate it. The other day I noticed that throughout the menu, I noticed these sub-menu buttons. And it's to help you understand which button to use to select something, like to set something as final, you know, for the setting, or to navigate beyond a menu into a sub-menu. And it doesn't feel consistent. Maybe it is consistent, but there's just so many buttons and so many options that it just doesn't feel consistent. That's just a place that I think Canon could really benefit from spending more time on, just cleaning up, making it easier to navigate. Give the user a little less options to get around the menu. It's not like you have to take away features, you know, menu features that you can customize and set up. But just like navigating the menu is kind of a pain in the butt. So navigating the menu is a pain. Maybe there's less dynamic range that nobody really notices. There's tiny feature like missing the movie time-lapse mode. That would be fantastic. There's probably a couple other smaller features that are missing. You know, I really like how on the D500 all of the buttons light up. If I'm out shooting like in a dark environment, all of my buttons on the back of the body light up, and that helps me navigate the camera a lot quicker. You know, I don't know. I wish that the ADD had 4K. I wish that it shot 120 frames per second in 1080. You know, but everybody wishes these things, and everybody wishes these things about a lot of different cameras. So can I just hate Canon because it has, you know, it lacks these features as well? No, not exactly. That's not fair. I hate a lot of brands that lack these features, including Nikon. But you know what the truth is sometimes the lack of these features, they kind of force me to be a little bit more creative, if that makes any sense. I kind of have to think a little bit differently. Kind of like a fixed or a prime lens might do to somebody beginning in in the composition world. You know, you have to move your body and you have to think about your surroundings a little bit more, right? Just because the camera is lacking in features doesn't mean that you're less of a professional with it. One of the things I try to remember is that, you know, the professional is the human being and not the gear. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to do what I can with it. I'm going to respect it. And we're going to move on. Test out that 7D Mark II. Maybe this is part one, I guess, of this tech review experience for the Canon 80D. I've only had it for a few days. I've only been really shooting video for like 2 days. Yeah, I've used Canon before, plenty of times, but not this body, not this setup. It's exciting. This is great. So yeah, there you have it. How should I end these things? I need to say something kind of clever. I got nothing.